Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Mike. How are you doing? We'll wait a couple minutes here before we start going over everything here, the latest, and don't want to say greatest. Nothing great about a potential major hurricane, right? Not a lot of changes from overnight with track, little tick, teeny little tick south, but like I said, we don't want to can't really make any reactions on these little shifts because they're going to be shifting around a little here and a little there. So main thing is in that cone and knowing your impact areas and potential. So we'll give another minute here. We'll start talking. We'll get a couple more little updates here I got to do my page. Usually I got music playing right now and I'm doing all this stuff. But I have no music playing. So there we go. All right. I think that's good. All right. So we don't have comments up when we go live on the road and we do these quick hurricane rundowns. Could be 30, 40,000 people in here. So I'm not meant to be rude or anything. It's just the way it goes. Got a lot of information to share with you on the storm. Man, I just like it's happening. I mean, it's a natural feeling of denial, but it's real, and we have to worry about the potential major hurricane Wednesday reaching the Florida Peninsula. There are some signs maybe it could weaken a little bit of on approach, but I'm cautious by saying that because the National Hurricane Center has a 120-mile-an-hour hurricane with a 90-mile-an-hour hurricane exiting the state. So there's things we can hope for and wish for, but we have to stick to facts and official forecasts at this point and go from there. Storm's supposed to make landfall just Wednesday, just a few days from now. So, but I got a lot of models to share with everybody. And we'll go from there. So my name, who's this dude? I'm Mike. Okay, Mike's Weather Page. Just a blogger, weather enthusiast, hobbyist. Not official, not a meteorologist. If you're new to the page, welcome. We got over 2 million now on Facebook, 500,000 on TikTok. It's crazy. Appreciate all the new followers, but please trust your local EOCs, emergency operations centers. Every county's got one. I linked on the very top of my site here underneath Milton. It says Florida FDM official storm information. If you click on that, you can go and see all kinds of information on the floridadisaster.org website here. You can see local county emergency sites, which would be all your counties. So if you're in a county and you want to know exactly what's going on, then this is where you go. I do not give individual advice, evacuation advice. That's all left up to the authorities. When they issue an evacuation, it's serious. Okay, they do not mess around. They do not just do it to do it. They do it when they believe there's danger. We just saw that with evacuations with Helene up and down the Florida West Coast on a system that didn't even make landfall. We saw serious tens of thousands of homes are flooded across the Florida West Coast. Okay. A lot of that news hasn't made it out yet, but there are tens of thousands of homes flooded already that dealt with a storm, that didn't even make direct landfall. So a lot of folks are, having to deal with this one, and it's going to be all the way through the state, it looks like, and we're going to have wind issues inland and on the East Coast. Every storm is different. Every storm has a different effect, impact, outcome. And we just have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I know, right? Little track changes are going to happen. One thing I've learned about tracking hurricanes is everybody's emotions change so quick at every 6-hour update, and we have to realize the cone is big. Hurricanes are big. This isn't like a tornado, and a little turn here or there is going to change everything. I mean, impacts are going to be widespread on every tropical system, meaning tornadoes, bands, feeder bands, surge, inland flooding. There's all kinds of effects and impacts with this system. Surge will make a big difference on small track changes. Eye wall will make a difference, but we can't predict that little wiggles and wobbles, and that's the problem. We're within 2 days right now, and what I've seen with most hurricanes in recent years, if you're on that center track 2 days from landfall, more than likely it's going to be somewhere else in that cone. That's just the way it goes. So we're going to see little wiggles, little wobbles. We're seeing that now, and um, we just have to stay alert. That cone is anywhere the eye can go. The impact area is way outside that cone. Sometimes this might be a little smaller storm. Cautious of that though, because I'll tell you why. But if it's subtropical, it's starting to expand into a subtropical system. It might have more widening impacts at landfall. So it's always very cautious to jump up and down on one single model run or on that, because we saw that with Helene. There was one model run that came out and it was really weak, and everybody was like, "See, we told you it wasn't going to be anything." And then the next model run, it was back to strong again. So we can't knee-jerk reaction to individual model run changes. We look for trends. We look for overall. That's why the NAC does small steps, and that's good for them. I think intensity though, they sometimes are a little too slow. But this year, I believe Ken Graham and that crew from prior years has done a really awesome job on these intensities. And in the past, they would start out low and go high. Now they're actually kind of being realistic. So, I mean, today's Sunday. I've already read, we got an MPW, our private subscribers. Thank you all. They're talking about water and supplies up and down Florida coast are out. Gas is already out from Helene still. So, it might be a very stressful couple days preparing for this thing, as we're kind of stretched as far as resources go. And that's what I'm worried about, is if this thing does become a major hurricane and impact the state, there are resources that are spread out all across the eastern United States right now that might slow down some of the recovery and restoration back to normal. So we could see prolonged power outages and other issues, just because crews are spread out everywhere. And that's just a rare thing. And I know there's talk about another system coming in behind it. It is October. We've talked about a backloaded hurricane season all year long. La Nina is catching up. So yeah, we'll show that at the very end. But we do one storm at a time. one storm at a time, for sure. Here's what it looks like on the big picture. This is why I'm cautious about all the talk about it being a really little storm. It is, it might be a tiny little storm. Might have a tiny little hurricane wind area. But these kind of things we just don't know. It is going to be moving fast, but the hurricane hunters are out there right now. We'll find out. But that's what it looks like. It's pretty large. Pretty healthy looking. Starting to get that look, believe it or not. It's actually getting a little bit of S. When they start getting that little bit of S, it's been pulling down moisture on the north end, and it's starting to get a lot of lightning, a lot of convection around the center. This is lightning. Anytime you get lightning in a developing system, that means pressures are dropping, and that's what we're seeing. Overall, this is your current satellite imagery, just kind of showing you. It's you'll see these clouds burst, and then they kind of cool down, and then they come back again. But the overall structure is definitely there. There's a lot of circulation underneath it. Hurricane hunters, unfortunately, are finding a strong system already. So they're out there right now. This is on Tropical Tidbits. I got this linked on the app, and I have it also linked on the website. This is real-time information. The hurricane hunters found a 991 pressure. Okay, it was 993. It was 1,005 or 4 around 5 a.m. This thing's dropping like a rock. Okay, pressure, lower the pressure, stronger the system. And when they drop fast, it usually means it's rapidly intensifying. Okay, and we're seeing a rapidly intensifying system. Whether or not it meets that criteria or not, we'll see. But the winds never catch up right away. The pressure drops and the winds catch up. So you'll see the winds start to catch up here as the pressures are in the hurricane range already. One What they say about small storms, I've seen it before. Smaller storms ramp up fast that have a tight core, and sometimes they can also ramp down fast, meaning uh, go poof. And hopefully that might happen. We do have some dry air to the north. We have a frontal line, strong frontal line to the north. Dry air is the big enemy of hurricanes, one of the big enemies. So hopefully, we could see a little bit of weakening on landfall. But again, I'm cautious on getting anybody excited when we have to stick with official information and modeling, and they're going to flip flop around. But anyway, so there's your tropical tidbits. Hurricane information. This is the current track. By the way, I'm coming to you live from Talladega, Alabama. Going home today, missing the race. Pretty much been working the whole week that we've been here. Julie's had a great time. Sarah's had a great time. I've had a good time. But we're heading home today. We'll be live in the morning as always, 9:19 tomorrow. We'll be live tomorrow night. We'll be live tonight somewhere on the road. I don't know where, how, when, what, where, what, when, why, how, what tonight. But we'll be driving home today. Live in the morning like normal. We'll be live tomorrow night like normal. We'll be live Tuesday like normal. We'll do live Tuesday night like normal. We'll be live Wednesday morning like normal. Okay, we got a lot of lives coming up, and there'll be a lot of changes. There'll be a lot of talking, a lot of track adjustments. So I'll be there every step of the way as always, and get everybody ready for this thing. So here's the latest track from the National Hurricane Center. Expecting a major hurricane Tuesday morning. And it's expected to be a major, essentially the landfall. They don't really talk about the landfall intensity, but 120 is what they expect on Wednesday morning, 1 a.m. It's supposed to be 90-mile-an-hour hurricane around Daytona Beach area if you follow the center. But the keynote on this is that it's going to still be a hurricane through the whole state of Florida. Okay. When we had Gene, we had Francis. We had hurricane effects on the East Coast and the West Coast. Same with Ian. So this is going to be an impactful storm for West Coast, inland, and East Coast because this thing is going to be moving very fast. Fast-moving systems don't weaken very fast, and it might be a tiny little system, but wherever it decides to go, we're going to see a lot of impacts. And right now, nobody knows where it's exactly going to go. That's why we have that cone. The cone is everything. The cone is potential. So, yes, if you're in Jacksonville, you're in the cone. Okay? West Palm Beach area. Naples even. Fort Myers, you're in the cone. So there's a reason there's a cone. Because there's some outlying models that are showing that direction. So every day we get that cone a little tighter, a little tighter, a little tighter, a little tighter. We pay attention to outliers. We pay attention to a little bit of history. Talking about history, a storm coming from the BOC, the Bay of Campeche, and that's crossed over from the Pacific, which used to be Tropical Depression 11, is rare to come straight across the Gulf of Mexico. So when we have a storm going east to west, we like barrel stronger systems like to go north, and they like to bend back east. So now we're seeing a system going kind of odd, right, west to east. So the stronger models have been tugging it more north than the operational model. The high-intensity hurricane models were a little bit different. The high-intensity hurricane models were trending a little east. It's kind of where Helene went. East meaning that shift east a little bit away from Tallahassee. Obviously, the effects were huge for everybody else. But what we're seeing with the hurricane models is a little bit more north than we're seeing with the operation model. So we'll see if that verifies. I think that's why the NAC is probably right down the middle. And that's why it's really very, very little track change here with the NAC in the last several runs. So they've been pretty consistent with this track. But again, impacts on approach, it's very important if you're new to hurricanes, wherever our system decides to go, the storm rotates counterclockwise. So all the strongest action is usually on the south side. Florida's a little different, though, because as our storm approaches, we start to get storms rotating in off the Atlantic, and we can start to see stronger storms on the East Coast. So roughest, dirtiest side on an approaching storm to the Florida West Coast is definitely center, wherever center goes, and then to the south. That's where we get the big surge. Surge is always south of center. It's always center, but south of center gets the big stuff too. Very rarely do you get any sort of surge on the north side because the winds are now coming out of the east. So initially, the dirty side's center south side. When it exits the storm, now starts rotating, and we started getting more dirty, stormy weather on the north side. Very odd. So Florida's very unique. So wherever this thing exits, you're going to have more weather to the north side with surge, storms up into Georgia, maybe some into South Carolina. So that's kind of a way to look at things. The counterclockwise flow controls the storms on that. Some models here, just I say don't pay attention to center line, but it's people really want to know if the track shifted, and I get it. So we saw a tiny little track shift south. We had it a little bit more north. We're talking like 5-10 miles, but it does make difference. I mean, one thing I stressed during Helene is nudges affect a lot as far as the impacts of the eye, but they don't affect a lot as far as the impacts overall. So that's where I worry sometimes that when we say a track shifted south a little bit, everybody in Orlando, south might say, oh, or north might say, oh, I'm not going to get anything. So, impacts are widespread. Widespread. These little track changes aren't going to affect overall things. It will affect the impact area, and that you just can't predict. It's like you're sitting there for a hurricane. You're in that zone of the eye, and you just don't know if the storm's going to wiggle or wobble last second, and nobody knows that. You just have to be prepared. Surge is so tricky to forecast. I'll not show you that, but that's the latest. We got a new track coming out soon, about an hour and a half, 11 a.m. Usually it's out by. We might, I don't know. I mean, we might see a little tick back south again, maybe, from what I'm seeing, but we'll see. And National Hurricane Center is pretty good about this. Every update we get closer to landfall, the cone gets tighter and tighter and tighter. So this is not a good track. Again, surge would be way less to the north. Your winds are going to be coming around like that, but they're going to be really strong like that, even into the bay a little bit. So that track means everything as far as the surge goes, more than anything. And that's just not, you can't predict that. A little wiggle, a little wobble. 20 miles, Ian was going to Tampa, 20-mile shift at the last second. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, we could see model trends, and at this point, though, it's still 3 days out. 2 days out, we see things change. So we're still in my opinion, we're still in a very fluid, changing. That's why I'm not so stressed yet, because history shows within 3 days, things usually move around a little bit. So we're not even in that 3-day window yet. And I've learned that in 2 days before landfall, we look at outliers. We look at the outer parts of cones. And more specifically, if we see more ensembles leaning on the south side of the cone, then we know there's a better likelihood of this thing shifting last second to those ensembles and the outliers. So we look at those ensembles, we look at spaghetti models, we look at the trends, and we got a little trend right now, kind of going back south again. But you got to worry, 3 days out, we get a lot of windshield wiper. So Ian, went to Panhandle, then it came back south. Everybody's emotions go with those. So it's a little early for me, honestly, to make bold predictions on, against the grain per se. If that makes sense. All right, so your consensus models. This is from Tomer Berg, this is Brian Tang. Excuse me. This is Brian Tang's website. Awesome website. I haven't linked Brian Tang. I had Berg's open for something else, but this shows you the consensus models, and it's the last 5. This is really close to what the National Hurricane Center uses for tracks. And people are always curious, like, what are the tracks doing? Well, the lightest color blue was our first one. We have 5 cycles now. The most recent one is dark blue. So we've kind of wiggled back. We were, Fort Myers, then it went north of Tampa, and then now it's kind of in the middle. So that kind of tells you maybe another little teeny track change coming in 11. That's kind of what I look at. NHC has kind of done the same. They started out low, went high, now they're in the middle. But I'm thinking we might see a little bump farther south. Huge implications for the whole west central area, whoever gets the actual center. But you got to prepare for that's the problem. And we're going to be in one of those situations, I'm afraid, that there's going to be a lot of evacuations and somebody's not going to get anything because that 10-mile shift, 20-mile shift means a lot less impacts to the north, a lot more to the south, and there's going to be people upset. But that's unfortunate. When we had Helene, it was a lot clearer picture. We knew the storm was doing that. There was no doubt about it. So we knew there was a large area that we're going to get surge. That was a given. Little track changes didn't make a difference. 10 miles on the Helene didn't make any difference on surge because it just paralleled the coast. And same with Idalia. A shift coming in this way makes a lot more difference because you have a lot less here and a lot more here, wherever that decides to set up. So a little more important as far as the landfall effects. As far as the overall effects goes with a storm, we're going to have a lot of storms incoming around, a lot of other issues that don't care about a 10-mile shift. Trust me. All right, so timing of winds. So Tuesday night, it's on par here. Late Tuesday night, we're going to start seeing tropical storm force winds. This is your earliest you might start seeing squall lines. This is not the storm. These are your feeder bands. So we'll start to see feeder bands almost 24 hours before landfall. So wherever our storm is Tuesday night, we're going to start seeing feeder bands. And a lot of people always get confused about that. They're like, I thought the storm was not going to be here till tomorrow, let's say, or Wednesday, and you start getting feeder bands on Tuesday. Well, that's because the feeder bands. So this more than likely means we'll have school closures on Tuesday and Wednesday, obviously, maybe Thursday, but for sure Tuesday because they have to open up shelters. That's why schools are shut down early because Tuesday they have to start bringing people in for shelters. So probably, well, I can't say officially, but more than likely schools will be closed on Tuesday. Maybe, I don't know, but I would think they would be for sure Wednesday, wherever this thing decides to go. All right, so there's that. I like that graphic. Rainfall obviously is already beginning now. Remember we talked about that frontal line. We talked about the initial area that we thought was going to be the system has ended up merging with the front and helping juice Milton. Remember we always said Pacific was going to mingle with the Gulf? Well, that's kind of what's going on. So we have a lot of rain right now currently. So let me show you what's going on with that. If you're wondering why it's raining in Florida. Whoa, that's not the right radar. Hold on a minute. Where did that one come from? This one. All right. So if you're wondering why it's raining in Florida, that original CAG ejection system that was marked from the NHC, I was watching it too. That was what Helene originally came from. That area got pulled up. Some of that fed into Milton. Some of that fed up into our old front. And this old front's passing through right now. So we got a lot of rain. So a lot of this flooding rain maps that I shared is accumulated rain from now until the storm. Heavy rain in South Florida. We got heavy rain coming in off the Gulf. We got heavy rain on the Atlantic side. We got heavy rain by East Coast. So all this is juicing up the ground, making things more saturated, increasing that flooding risk that's going to come. So here's your totals through Friday, basically. And you can just see isolated pockets, 8 to 12 inches around Miami. I mean, you can't pinpoint exactly who's going to get what, but the idea is someone's going to get double-digit rains in this whole Florida peninsula, and we're going to have rain training. We're going to have some folks getting double digits, maybe 20 inches plus, and that always happens with tropical systems. It catches so many people off guard. Everybody gets focused on the winds and the category strengths, and then flooding ends up being the worst thing that could ever happen. Flooding is awful, and inland flooding is awful. We talk about hurricane fatalities. Believe it or not, half of flooding, 80 to 90% of all hurricane fatalities are water. A lot of that is inland flooding, not just surge, but inland flooding is just a big impact. as coastal flooding. Inland flooding can cause fatalities because of people getting trapped in homes, driving in it, drowning, just all the impacts that go with that. So just know there's going to be a lot of rain and a lot of standing water the next several days, making things even harder to evacuate and potentially find hotels. And it's going to be a mess, man. I can tell you right now, when they issue evacuation orders, most of the hotels are probably full right now from Helene folks. Okay, hotels fill up with government officials, private contractors, residents that are homeless now because of their homes being flooded. So if you think you're going to be in an evacuation zone, I strongly recommend on this Sunday morning grabbing some coffee and make a hotel reservation. You can always cancel it, but I have a feeling that it's going to be hard to find hotel reservations because there's already people there from Helene. Somebody's going to be mad if this storm shifts a little north, a little south. There's going to be somebody evacuated mad because they didn't get what they thought. But be glad if you evacuate and it doesn't happen. Don't be mad. Don't be mad. People get mad. Don't get mad. You don't want a storm. Think about it. You don't want it. Be happy. Be happy that you're going home to an unflooded house, right? The emotions of hurricane season, incredible. But anyway, so I'm concerned about that. Obviously, flooding is never talked about enough. We're already seeing excessive rains down in southeast Florida today because of this lingering mess that we got. Flood potential map here shows the red now. This is more today and tomorrow, but there's South Florida. There's a big red area, Tampa Bay northward. This is just because the grounds are already saturated. And unfortunately, what that means is more power lines are going to go down because of winds. Doesn't take much, man. Trees fall down with heavy rains, and the root systems are saturated, and we'll have increased power outages because of this ground that's already saturated. We'll have river flooding. All this water just has nowhere to go. A lot of the levels have never come down since Debbie. So a big concern for flooding. Here's your latest spaghetti model tracks on tropicaltidbits.com. We did see a little shift south. See that? So I would almost guarantee that we're going to see a little shift south at the 11 o'clock. So we'll see. But definitely seeing a shift south in the spaghetti models. Interesting. Still bad. There's a lot of population along that Florida West Coast, but the crossover is still there. But interesting. Saw that coming. But we'll see. 11 o'clock advisory coming out. So a little teeny shift south, maybe. Oof. Tampa Bay right on that edge, though. Down in Fort Myers, still watching close. And unfortunately, even down in Naples. But it is tightening up, believe it or not. These impacts to the state, though, are going to be big. And I'm going to talk about the subtropical nature of our system if it does start to do that, what that means on exit. So here is your GFS ensemble. See, we're starting to see that little bit of bend here towards the end. So that's why I was going to show this before I saw that. But definitely GFS is a little farther south. The European hasn't done that yet, but we still have a big spread for the Euro. Red, stronger north. That's my only concern on these operational models. They're not showing a strong system like the hurricane models. And, I made a point to mention earlier that during Helene, the operational models were a little more west of the hurricane models. And the hurricane models are trending a little bit more north of operational models. So they have come down a little bit too, but we don't want to not, don't think this, that this is where we can't get wrapped up in like, oh, it's gonna be nothing. We have to stay very alert wherever you live on this system for sure. So there's your Euro. Super Blend, this is the other one. This is what I just posted, just kind of showing you how the ensemble plots. These are Tomerberg's website. We don't have the European ensembles on here yet, but you can see an overall. This is only using the UK and the GFS, but you can see, a little bit of their. I think it's a little farther south, Tampa Bay, for direct hit. Again, when you start mixing in the hurricane models, then that's a little farther to the north. So the NHC, I think, is going to split the difference and do another little track nudge south. Densities all over the place. We got everything from a 1 to a 5. Some weakening, hopefully before landfall, but pretty good agreements that we're going to see a strong system through the state of Florida. Surge maps are not really coming out yet from officials, but we do have the Sierra map, and the Sierra map is a good tool because it adjusts and it shows you surge based on current track, and it is so dependent on where the center goes. Last night's track was just about 10 miles north, and we had parts of Oldsmar under 10, 11, 12-foot surge. A little bump south, surge now is a little bit more, obviously, a lot more. I'm saying a little bit in the bay, a lot more to the south in Tampa Bay. Definitely a lot down here in Longboat Key, Sarasota. I mean, lots of folks down here. A lot of beautiful beaches, and unfortunately, that would be devastating for a lot of folks. So, the surge is going to be epic. Some of the numbers you've never seen before. This thing verifies wherever this thing decides to go. But these track changes are going to be, very impactful for surge more than anything. But we just can't predict it. 2 days before, every storm seems like they're changing a little bit. So we just kind of have to know. That's why the NHC will have surge warnings showing high numbers to the north. Sometimes they don't verify because they have to prepare people for the idea if this thing wiggles to the north. And with a system like this, stronger systems tend to go east. Stronger systems tend to want to go northeast. So we have to look at historical bumps and turns, and that's why your stronger models, I think, are pulling more to the north because stronger systems typically go to the east. Now we're talking about a system here. It's kind of wants to go northeast because they all end up wanting to do that. But anyway, that's huge surge. Unfortunately, this was based on the 5 o'clock advisory, but this whole area here. I mean, we're looking at possibilities of this is getting 9.5 feet. But everybody wants to know. I have this linked on my site too, so this kind of gives you an idea where the surge might be setting up. But this far out, it's really a guess because we just don't know the exact center. All we know is a major hurricane on approach. Where do they get these graphics at? That show a little weakening right there, 109, 110 miles an hour. I don't know if these are official data points or not. Interesting. 100 mile an hour winds in Tampa. Still showing 96 mile an hour winds. I know officially we had it 90 mile an hour off the coast of Daytona Beach. So again, it'll be a hurricane through the state. Let's look at the latest hurricane models, and then we'll look at the latest GFS and stuff. These are on Tropical Tidbits. These are the 6Z, so these just came out. We'll see what kind of trends we got. So already the initialization is incorrect here. This is initializing at 1,004, and the system's already 991. So the system's already stronger now where the H4 thought it would be, but still the idea is what does it think it's going to do? And it's a tiny little system, and then it starts to open up a little bit. There's 950 millibar, 46, 44, 40, 37, 36. I mean, it gets down to 928. Starts to get a bigger wind field. That's why I'm cautious about talking about it being such a little system right now. But it's a littler wind field. Here's 929 on Wednesday. The good news is a lot of them are showing it trying to weaken sometime, but notice that wind field expanding. Okay, this is the wind field. This is 10-meter winds. So we have a basically green is tropical storm force or greater, knots actually 40 knots. So pretty significant winds um, in the green, and this would be Wednesday night. But those are a lot of winds. These are a lot of winds. I mean, so cautious about this tiny storm yet, but it is weakening a little bit. 936 is not weakening, but it's better than strengthening. 940, 944, smack dab in the Tampa Bay at 947. So it does weaken it. All of them are weakening it a little bit, but you got to be careful saying weakening on a 947 hurricane. That's still a very strong major hurricane. And it passed through the state, 954, Lakeland, Orlando. That's going to be massive hurricane winds for you. It might be the strongest inland storm we've ever had through the middle part of Florida, honestly. Inland effects can reach Georgia and Alabama, hitting the upper Gulf. Cat 2, Cat 3 winds have made it to Georgia and Alabama before. So, fast moving system I do not like because the wind, it does not just disappear. It takes time for storms to reduce strength. So, and then it's going to exit, 975, still pretty strong Cat 1, Cat 2 hurricane on its exit here as it goes. So there will be some winds across the, lower Georgia coming in South Carolina. This will be on Thursday and Friday. Could be some sneaky squall lines. But you can see where our system, when it exits, the storms now begin to rotate around this and build over that warm Gulf Stream. That's when we start to see these big winds. See this area purple and darker reds? These are winds. So even though our system's here, the dirty side, windy side now is the north side. And that could be significant beach issues and beach erosion. I know there's still areas recovering that way from Ian and Nicole. So definitely, this is not just a West Coast concern. This is going to be a strong system exiting the state. And if it becomes subtropical, subtropical systems start to open up and they widen their wind field. And when that happens, more effects are going to be felt away from the center. And that's going to be important because, especially at landfall, if this thing becomes subtropical even before the West Coast, we could see this wind field. I think I clicked Leslie. Oh, wrong storm. There's 4 storms right now. So let's go to HMON, Milton. It's initializing. Let's see where it initializes at because the storm's stronger now than it's supposed to be. They all start their runs on what they think it is. So it started its run at 1,006 millibars. Currently, we're at 991 millibars. So definitely, it'll be stronger in the next 2. I mean, stronger. It'll be stronger than what it's showing here. Now, it depends on landfall if it weakens or not. But anyway, latest HMON 935, 937. Watch the wind field expand. Really expand. All right. So this is tricky. This is showing you a very expanding wind field on approach, and this definitely implicates more people on the south side and inland as our storms rotate around. So if we got a big widening wind field at landfall, it might be weakening a little bit before landfall, but look at that wind field expand. So now we're down to 951. So it did weaken 953, 955. But notice how these are trending a little bit north, and that's my only, not concern, but operational models are showing a weaker system south. Stronger systems tend to want to go a little north. With Helene, these models trended a little east. The main runs trended a little west. These ended up being correct. So we just got to watch these and see if they trend south too. But right now they're not. They're kind of sticking right there, smack down in the middle of West Central Florida. But look at these purple winds expanding. Okay, this is showing you a very this actually went a little north, but really starts to weaken it right before landfall. But still a strong hurricane. And then it crosses the state. There's these big winds north of center on exit. So the HMON really opens up our system, brings a lot of winds to the north side as this thing exits the state. So you can see it's got a chance to weaken the last second, but this is tricky because you don't want to say that because surge doesn't care. Surge will still be coming in. We're going to have very low pressures. But a widening wind field changes things because there'd be more people feeling the effects of a system than a tiny little system. Charlie was a tiny little system at landfall like that. Look at how the wind field just expands. It's incredible. All right, the Haas A is a really good model too. Let's look at the parent version because it's a lot larger screen. 974, 60, 50, 43. It goes down to 22. Hell, man, it goes down to 913. Holy crap. But watch the wind field start to expand. 925, 913, 911 pressure. That's going to be pushing a lot of water. 910. How low can we go? But look at that wind field. It's doing the same thing. Really expanding. Does weaken quite a bit, but still 955. I hate to say the word weaken. It's good news, bad news. I mean, got three regardless is bad. I'm telling you. We don't want a 920. 920 is one of the strongest hurricanes ever. Okay, so don't be putting out your pom poms right yet, thinking this is great news because it's good news. It's better news, but it's not. I think there's nothing to worry about. Big wind field here. Across the state, 979. Still a hurricane crossing the state. There's our wind field to the north, really getting winds into northern Florida and Georgia. Midweek is all, and then it exits out of here. So, but what's really amazing is how fast it develops it, and then it transitions into a larger, wider system. And I'm sure there's dry air involved with it too. All right, the Haas B really is the last one here we need to look at, and let's see what it does. God, it brings it down to 901. Jesus, that's Tuesday. That's almost not even believable. 901. Where the hell? What island's that? There's a little island right there north of Yucatan. I'm sorry, I'm not very good with geography, but that's not good. I have to figure that one out. What island is that? I don't even remember. All right, but that's down to 901. That would rival one of the lowest pressure storms ever. 902. But look at the wind field. Let's see if it opens it up. It does. And it brings it in at a 948. So interesting. I think a system like this would be more impactful for folks because there's going to be a larger population dealing with winds inland than there would be if it was a tiny little system. So this would bring hurricane force winds way inland, a lot more than you know. You just look at the pressures. Anything 970 over land is still a Cat 1, Cat 2. And if the official NHC forecast calls for that. So there's your heavy wind, the dirty side on the north side on the exit. All right, let's look at the latest GFS, what it's doing. Not the best model for intensity right now, but still it's pretty belts. But I'm glad I do these lives because I learned so much. Look at the wind field expansion. They're all doing that. Tiny little system by the Yucatan, and then look at that. Very wide. The greens are very strong winds. These are 40 plus knots, so that's very strong tropical storm force winds. This GFS going smack dab in Tampa, right over my house. 951, bad system. We don't want to minimize the word weakening at all. Listen, we've never took a direct hit like this on the Florida West Coast that I can recall for anybody. We've had skirts. Now, I'm talking about this west central area. I'm not talking about obviously Ian areas and Charlie areas and Irma areas. I'm talking about if this thing goes to Tampa Bay area. All right, that's enough of that. As far as the effects of a storm, let me show you kind of what it's going to look like. We're going to have. Let's just keep it on tropical tidbits here. So we talked about the flooding impacts. We talked about surge impacts. We talked about wind impacts. The other thing we look at is tornado impacts. And Um, you can kind of get an idea looking at this simulated radar. Let's do it on the H-Wharf. So this is kind of what it looks like. These are called feeder bands, okay? But these feeder bands will reach basically 12 hours greater, and these little guys have the risk of tornadoes. So when these feeder bands come in off of the water, they're going to be building all the way through South Florida. They're going to be out there on the other side. And these are what you watch for inland, okay? So there's our eye way still over the Gulf of Mexico. But these feeder bands are going to be wrapping in, and these are the ones we watch for tornadoes. And there will be tornado warnings. There could be a lot of tornado warnings. Sometimes we see dozens of tornado warnings. And wherever they end up going, you're going to see tornado warnings way out ahead of center. So that's the other side of this storm for Miami. And that's because we'll have energy coming around the peninsula. And the problem with the Florida Peninsula is it's so damn skinny that we can have the effects, wrapping in around our approach here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So once our system comes in, as I drew before, we'll start to, we might see, storms rotating in like that on approach because the water feeds the system. Rarely do you get much on the west side. That's because the feeder bands start to ingest dry air that's to the north. This area here is fuel. So we have fuel feeding the southern and the eastern feeder bands, and they come around the Atlantic and they go into the Florida East Coast. But the storms that are coming out of the north, most of the time there's dry air to the north because of our frontal line system that we got, and they help weaken the feeder bands on the north and the west side. That's why they always say the east side is the worst side. Here's kind of that front line coming into play. This is on Tropical Tidbits too, but you can see as our system approaches, as any tropical system in Florida, because it's usually frontal influence. Our front is up to our north. This is dry air. And what happens is we have a strong counterclockwise system here, and it starts to pull in this dry air. And sometimes it'll help weaken the system, but sometimes it runs out of time and it doesn't. But the reason we have more storms here on the northern and the eastern side is because it's feeding off moisture, and then we don't have moisture on the north and the west side. That's why they always say the north and the east side is the worst side. But it will be, there will be some dry air, and then look how the dirty side turns on the north side here, pulling in moisture on the exit towards Georgia. I think Georgia, South Carolina might get some sneaky rains and some feeder bands for sure as this thing rotates and storms off of the Gulf Stream. But it should exit out to sea. The reason being is we have a high to the high pressure to the north and a high pressure to the south, and these basically are squeezing our system and pushing it out of here. So that's kind of the pattern. We'll see that right here. So we have a high pressure that is to the north, and we have a high pressure to the south, and basically this front or low pressure frontal line trough area is pulling our system up towards it, and so high pressure builds, and basically there's nowhere to go but there, and that's so typical. These systems cannot penetrate these high pressure areas, so I lost my clicker, but oh well. There we go. And you can see that it just kind of absorbs. So recon's out there now. We can watch that. 991 pressure, maintaining that. Winds will start to catch up. It looks like it's definitely organizing. Unfortunately, low pressure already. Hurricane pressures already. Long range, I do want to talk about it real quick. I know that there's modeling, there's people starting to talk, but there is a sign of possibly something coming up out of the Caribbean. There are some ensembles picking it up on the Euro. Season's not over, but I'm not going to show any runs. Just realize that yes, this is where we watch in October and November. And yes, we're probably going to see another system somewhere down the line, um, because his history says it's only October 6th. But let's deal with Milton first. All right. So, I came to you live. Thank you, Elon Musk. Thank you, Starlink. I've done about 8 lives since I've been at Talladega. I've been very responsible and proud of myself. Going to bed early, getting up early, making sure keeping everybody up to date. I love doing it. That's not a complaint. I love weather. I hate this type of weather. I'm worried about major hurricane into Florida. But we're heading home today, and we'll be doing a live somewhere tonight on the road, and I'll be doing a live in the morning. Like I said, we got a live tomorrow, 9:19 Eastern. We'll do one tomorrow night. We'll do one Tuesday morning. We'll do one Tuesday night. We'll do one Wednesday morning. I will be storm chasing. I will be. And big thanks to Shelly for being there for us all the time. I know we got a lot of new subscribers. Thank you very much. However, being a subscriber to our page is more about supporting our page and what we do, and it's impossible to get to everybody during times like these. Okay, so just be patient. We really appreciate it. We're one big happy weather family, and we crossed 2 million on Facebook. I can't believe it. But we'll get to all that after the storm. Promise you that. But you're not missing out on any information. I don't put anything on the Brew Crew that's not out here, so don't think you're missing anything, for sure. All right, and we got a lot of great supporters and sponsors. We'll go through them all maybe on our next live, but I need to get going. I need to get the hell out of Daytona or Talladega. So. All right, so again, thanks for tuning in. Hope there was some good information. I try to cover everything, hopefully make some sense, and do it my way. And we'll see. We'll just see. Today's Sunday. It might be your last day to get things. So, number one, if you think you're going to be in an evacuation zone, find a hotel now. Go over your hurricane plans. I have a lot of great information here from National Hurricane Center on my site. I got tons of links. Have a plan, prepare. It's all top here. National Weather Service plan and prepare. Very top of the page. I'll circle it right there. Read that if you're nervous. Remember, this is the most important link. Living in Florida, your FDEM, Florida Division of Emergency Management, has all the information, all your county EOCs. Listen to your EOCs. Know your zone. 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 You know what? 2 years ago, I didn't even know my zone. That's how bad I am. 2 years ago, I was the typical Floridian. Didn't care. We got this, but you don't mess around with surge. You do not mess around with surge. Power, listen, surge and water do not mix. If you think you're going to have flooding, turn off your breaker, because once those water reaches your receptacles, it's trouble. Never run a generator in a house, 20 feet at least, okay? Very dangerous. 2 things that don't get talked about enough. And just have a plan. If you're going to evacuate, make sure they take pets. That's a very stressful thing. A lot of hotels do not. So I feel bad for everybody. This is awful. And it's real. So we'll look for the all important 11 o'clock advisory, all right? And we'll see what it says. We'll have a new NSC advisory at 11, a new one at 5. See if there's any changes. Widening system. I'm worried about those talking points going around that it's a small system. It'll be a small system, but it's going to be a widening system at landfall, meaning much more impacts, much more surge, much more inland effects, more effects north on exit. So a lot of information. I hope you got a lot out of it. All right. We will talk soon. See you tonight somewhere. Then we'll definitely be back tomorrow unless I don't make it home because of travel troubles. But we'll be on the road, so we'll figure it out. All right. Have a good Sunday.